Welcome to 5 Minute Bible, your daily guide for your daily reading. Today's March the 9th, and we'll be looking at Numbers 33 through 34. Now, I want you to imagine you're standing on the plains of Moab after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. The Jordan River lies ahead, and beyond it sits the land God promised to Abraham centuries earlier. But before Israel can cross into that land, God asked them to do something unusual. He asked them to remember the journey. And Numbers 33 through 34 pauses the story at this moment of anticipation to remember. And first, Moses records every single stage of the wilderness journey, retracing the path from Egypt to the very edge of Canaan. And then God looks forward, describing the exact land that Israel will inherit and how it will be divided. And the people are invited to see both the road behind them and the promise ahead of them. And in that way, Numbers 33 begins with a very detailed list of Israel's travel stages. And Moses records every major stopping place from the day that they left Egypt all the way until the moment that they're standing ready to enter into the promised land. At first, the chapter can feel like a very long itinerary, but it's actually something far more meaningful. Every location represents a moment when God guided his people and he corrected them and he delivered them or he provided for them. And the list quietly retells the entire wilderness story. It reminds Israel of Egypt and the Red Sea and the bitter waters of Marah, the manna in the desert, the covenant at Sinai, the rebellion at Kadesh Barnea, the long years of discipline that followed. And what might appear to be a random wandering travelogue is actually revealed to be a carefully directed journey because God was present at every single step along the way. Now, after recounting the journey, the chapter turns towards the future, where Israel is going to enter into the land and they're commanded to drive out the inhabitants and remove the idols of the nation. And if they fail to do this, then those remaining will become a constant source of spiritual trouble for them. Then Numbers 4 outlines the boundaries of the land of Israel and what they're going to inherit. Because God doesn't promise them a vague territory, he promises them something that's carefully defined within the borders of Canaan, and God appoints leaders who's going to oversee the distribution of the land among the tribes. I mean, the inheritance is not uncertain at all. It's not chaotic at all. It is clearly defined and very deliberately prepared. Now, as you read these chapters today, I want you to consider the following question. Do I recognize how carefully God has guided the journey behind me and how carefully God is leading me in the future? Numbers 33 through 34 reminds us today that what often feels like wandering in the moment is actually later revealed to be God's providence. And that is the key pattern that emerges in these chapters. It's the connection between memory and inheritance. Before Israel possesses the land, they're asked to remember the wilderness. The story of their journey must not be forgotten once the promise arrives. And that memory serves a very important purpose because remembering the wilderness is going to keep the people humble. It's going to remind them that they didn't arrive at the promised land by their own strength. Every step of the journey depended upon the grace and guidance and mercy of God. And at the same time, the future is now becoming concrete. The boundaries are beginning to be drawn. The leaders are appointed and the land is being prepared for distribution. The people themselves are moving from a wandering settlement to a people who are getting ready to obtain their inheritance. And this pattern speaks directly into our lives today because spiritual maturity requires both a gratitude for what God has done for us in the past, but also a readiness to step into the future that he's preparing. Now, these chapters also point unmistakably to Jesus Christ because Israel's journey through the wilderness anticipates a larger story of humanity moving towards restoration that God has promised. Just as God guided Israel step by step through the desert, Christ is now leading his people through the journey of faith toward the inheritance of the eternal kingdom that is coming. And the New Testament later reflects upon this wilderness motif and explains that the promised land ultimately points beyond itself to eternity. It anticipates the greater rest that God has prepared for his people that one day they will step into as he leads them fully home. Jesus is our true leader who brings his people into that rest. What Israel experienced in the land of Canaan was but a shadow of the greater inheritance that Christ has secured through his death, burial, and resurrection. Now, as you read Numbers 33 through 34 today, pay careful attention to how the journey behind Israel is remembered and the inheritance ahead of them is carefully defined. And tomorrow we're going to see God establish cities of refuge and finalize the structures of justice that are going to shape their life moving forward in the land. But with that, read your Bible carefully, devotionally, and joyfully, and may the Lord use his word to sanctify you completely, and we will continue our journey tomorrow. God bless you.